War in Ukraine, rising energy prices, increasing inflation and cost of living. How can the European Union maintain its climate course and convince citizens to commit to carbon neutrality by 2050? This is the challenge for my guest, European Commissioner for the Environment, Virginijus Sinkevičius.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You presented some proposals to restore nature. What are the targets of this nature restoration law?
So today we really made a huge step from only protecting the nature to nature restoration. And the main target is going to be to have 20% of nature restoration action around the EU by 2030. Then we have different ecosystem targets, which includes peatlands, grasslands, pollinators, and so on, even urban areas, which I think is now very, very important to the hearts of Europeans, especially realizing during the lockdowns how we really miss green coverage in urban areas. So our goal is to increase by 2030 5% of urban areas green coverage.
According to your assessment, what would be the cost of inaction and what are the benefits of restoring biodiversity?
So we did a really thorough impact assessment. It's almost 700 pages, and the main important, most important thing probably, if we speak about action and inaction, is actually benefits. We should stop living in a myth that acting for nature, restoring nature, is just costs and no benefits. And our impact assessment shows that one invested euro brings 8 euros of benefits. And those benefits comes directly, for example, through our farmers in increased yield. Because I really don't know who could produce if you don't have a fertile soil, which has a high efficiency, if there is no pollination. So, for example, 5 billion of direct agricultural output is actually dependent on pollination. So with pollinators declining, this is a threat for that agricultural output. So I think there are very clear benefits of investment in nature restoration, and I'm really happy that we have these solid numbers backing our legislation.
What kind of measures can be done to restore nature?
For example, forests, they could be managed, but in a sustainable way, so that there is no, for example, threat to soil, that soil is able, after forest management, to still absorb carbon and water, and so on. If we look at the peatlands, of course, the obvious thing is revetting lands and restoring peatlands. Basically, you know, most of the time leaving them, and then the nature does its thing. So it very much depends on ecosystem. And here, I think what's very important that after the legislation is adopted, member state is going to have 2 years to prepare their plans, looking at which ecosystem for them are the most important ones, which are the priorities, and how they're going to restore it. So we leave, let's say, ownership to member states and stakeholders in member states.
Next to this nature restoration law, this package, there was also a question of reducing pesticides. Some member states want to water down this ambition. How do you react?
No, I wouldn't say that member states wanted to water down. It's probably where member states were raising a very important point, that there is a big difference. If you look at usage of pesticides per square meter in member states, so we have really intensive use in some member states, and then very low use in others. And then if you have this overarching target of 50% within the EU, so is it 50% for everyone? So from the small one to cut 50% can be a huge challenge, and who is using it intensively, that might be not as of a big challenge.
Given the economic difficulties and the war in Ukraine, is the Green Deal still a priority for the EU?
Our energy dependence is extremely dangerous. Which today Russia is openly using it to try to use as a tool of chantage against the European countries. So Green Deal proves that it's not only good for our climate ambition, for saving our ecosystems, but also for our geopolitical choices, freedoms, and ambitions.
You were talking about chantage. Some member states, Germany and Austria, are considering reopening some coal power plants. Is this something you can accept? I mean, it goes against the carbon neutrality target.
That's true, but we need to also, ensure that there is a stability in the market to our consumers. So if it's a last resort necessary action, we need to consider it. If let's say what's most important, that we so far see that is not going to have an impact to our 2030 or our 2050 goals. That's most important. Green Deal is not here for a short run. Green Deal is a long haul. And of course, in that long haul, we see very unexpected things happening. If you ask me 2.5 years ago how this Commission mandate would look like, I would be completely wrong. First of all, we had a pandemic for almost 2 years. Now we have war in Europe. Russia attacked Ukraine. So of course it changes the dynamic, and we need to also adjust. But in the long haul, our goals remains unchanged.
The climate transition will have a cost for the citizens, and the cost of living is already rising. When the bill will go down?
That's a very good question. So clearly the costs that are increasing, they're not directly linked to the European Green Deal. First of all, we saw what happened with the energy prices. So again, our dependency on fossil fuels, and in particular on gas, was the first and most important issue of raising costs. Then on top of that, Russia, of course, attacked Ukraine. It was a huge shock to global value chains. So, of course, all these events, they're going to have a pressure on prices in Europe. First of all, we have to ensure that we have a sufficient packages in member states to support the most vulnerable groups, socially vulnerable groups, especially when the heating season starts in member states, so that member states prepare a targeted measures. Same goes as regards the fuel prices. But at the end of the day, I think the answer is very clear. When we're going to have our energy resources completely independent from the third countries, that will make us less vulnerable, and that won't add, a security on the prices to consumers.
Commissioner Sinkevičius, thank you for answering our questions.
Thank you.